Welcome to the space between heaven on earth. This is a companion podcast to Awakening Heaven on Earth, created as a space for reflection, conversation, and lived experience. Here, we enter the pause between knowing and becoming, between insight and embodiment, between heaven and earth. These conversations are not about answers or conclusions. They are about presence, about listening, about reasoning together, about meeting one another honestly in the unfolding journey of awakening. I'm your host, Jeffrey Aylor. Again, welcome and thank you for entering the space between with us. Welcome to the Space Between, Episode 6, Unity with Others. In our recent episodes, we've explored unity with God and unity with the self and the source we arise from, the presence within us. Today we turn toward unity with others and specifically how we see one another. Much of our experience of separation doesn't come from actual distance. It comes from perception, from assumptions, labels, fears, stories we carry about each other. There's a long spiritual tradition describing how Jesus seemed to be able to look at people differently. He didn't primarily see them through their behavior or their social identity, but there's something deeper, something already whole, something perfect within them. So Joel, grateful to have you with me today for this conversation. And before we move on into our reflection questions, I do want to just stop and ask you to share, what does the idea of sacred vision and seeing others beyond judgment stir up in you?
When I hear the term sacred vision, I don't think about trying to see people differently through effort. It's more something it just basically you have to learn to basically take a step back and create space between the judgment that comes into your mind and whether or not you actually, give it the time or the attention that it deserves. So basically, if you are looking at somebody and you automatically think, is this a threat, or is this a bad person, or is this anything like that? You can have those thoughts, but then you can basically find that space and take a step back and realize that that's not necessarily the situation, and that you may be reading it wrong based on your conditioning, your past experiences, things like that, and they no longer become problems that you need to evaluate or things you got to figure out, but you find the person within them that resonates with you, or you can find that this situation isn't what I thought it was, or this person is going through something that I've gone through and didn't realize, anything like that. So it's seeing others beyond judgment is hard, because judging people is easy. It's the thinking that's hard. But that is the thing that we've been given the ability to do, and that's take a step back and figure it out and not just assume.
I like the way you say it's easier, right? It's easier to profile people, to make quick judgments based on what you see, their behavior. It always has fascinated me how Jesus, again, as an example, could look at somebody that most people in the world would judge as bad, and yet he still saw something in them beyond that allowed him the opportunity to show them love and compassion. And I think that's where the healing he did came from, is that he saw beyond their outward situation and saw them as perfect. in the inner person, in their true self. And that's the medium through which he healed people as well. So kind of an interesting concept, right? To think about. This has been something that I've seen it. I've read about it. I never really thought about it. How and why? And can we see people that way? And I've come to the conclusion we absolutely can. Is it easy? No. Is it possible? Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. So before we go into the reflection questions, again, I just want to share what our intention is and isn't in this case. You know, the goal of these space between episodes is not to correct people. It's not designed to claim that we are perfect or that we know everything. That's never the intent. It's strictly an invitation for us to think and to consider the topic that is the primary focus of our awakening series in that week. But again, this is really just designed for us to do what you were just talking about. We have the ability to stop and think, and let's process it, and let's see if we can figure out how best to apply it within ourselves and within our experience. So again, it's just to simply notice with honesty the habits and perceptions that we've inherited and the moments when those habits can be softened, right? Or even briefly softened. With that in mind, let's go ahead and move into our first reflection question. And I think this is a good one. So what influences family, culture, religion, media, education have shaped how I learned to see other people?
Well, it started long before I even realized I was learning it. It was how I came up through our family, through our culture, through our education. Unspoken rules about what was safe or respectable or okay and what's right and what's wrong. It was basically done without actual active learning. It was inherited and not necessarily chosen. You know, good, bad, indifferent doesn't make a difference. It's just something that we all have as we learn to live in this world. And it takes time and concerted effort to actually break free from those conditioned responses. It takes the awareness of it first, and then it takes time to actually realize what that awareness is and how to handle it and how to change it. It doesn't make them disappear. They're always there. I still catch myself anytime I see, a certain person or whatever. I automatically have an assumption. It's not always right. Sometimes it is. Those are there basically as protective mechanisms. When you see somebody who looks like he's, not a good person, has a weapon, whatever it might be, anything, your body and your mind naturally sees that, processes it instantly, and decide. You have to decide is it true or not.
Right. Fight or flight. At that point, right. Fight or is it flight?
Right. But sometimes we do it when there is no issue of safety. We do it as quick judgment because we've seen this before, and it works at times, but sometimes it's wrong, and sometimes it gets you in trouble because you make an assumption and that ends up being incorrect. But so those thoughts, even when you have started to see them and take that time to process them, decide is it true or not, or is it something I need to actually worry about. They don't disappear. They happen, but then you learn basically to let those thoughts go and just see the person for who they are. Just another human being going through this life, having an experience, whatever that may be, and meeting them where they are.
Well, I know for me, as I grew up in a very religious family, a family that had strong beliefs, it was natural for me to take on the beliefs of my family and to take on the principles that they taught or they lived. The one thing I think is so interesting, and as I look back, boy, I wish I had known this earlier. We actually have to teach kids to not be loving. They're unassuming for the most part.
Absolutely.
they look at another person. It doesn't matter what color they are. It doesn't matter what sex they are. It doesn't matter none of those things matter. They can be friends and they love them and they love to play and they see no real difference.
Right.
They have to be taught that there's a difference.
Right. And we do it all the time in our society.
I was going to say
we find something to be different. We find somebody who has something different, and we make that separation. We divide.
Well, and I think all of the different, we listed family, culture, religion, media, education, all of them contribute something to the development of the idea that I'm different than this person. I'm different than that person, whether it's geography again, whether it's sex, whether it's color, whether it's sexual orientation or gender, all those different things that we have. And I'm finding that as I come to understand, I think, some of these principles a bit more, my true self is not a man. I'm both male and female. I have both in me, but my spirit is we talked about this a few weeks ago. It's androgynous. It's both. Has all those characteristics. It's not one or the other, and it's not white, male, not black. It's not Asian. It's colorless. And I think recognizing that in everybody helps you be more accepting that there is no difference between us, that any of those differences that I am thinking, again, they're thoughts, or perceiving, have been things that I have either been taught or have learned on my own or created in my own mind, and they're not real. Pretty simple. Not easy. Right? So are there influences that we experience today, even as adults? Are we are we still being influenced by many of these things?
100%. Yeah, it doesn't stop. And that's the biggest challenge, is that if you don't learn to recognize that you're basically being conditioned or you're being taught a certain way, then you'll continue to have repeat the same patterns, and have the same judgments, and keep yourself divided from the rest of the world.
I agree with you on, not all of these decisions. We also talked a few weeks ago about the difference between discernment and judgment. Mm-hmm. Being able to discern a situation, just assess what is true about the current situation, is a good thing. Making bad or false judgments and then applying good, bad, right, wrong, right, that when you start making those additional thoughts, you go from discernment to judgment. And sometimes that will get you in trouble.
Yeah, it usually is assumption based off of your judgment.
We know what happens when we assume.
Yep.
Right? So there's another term that I find to be very helpful when we think about things like this, and it's situational awareness. I was taught this in the military very heavily, to be situationally aware of wherever you are. You talked about, sometimes you may see somebody and they instill in you a sense of fear, or you see something with them that would cause you, to be uncomfortable. And then you get into the fight or flight, mindset. But situational awareness, again, to me, is really, really important. It's valuable because you do have to make decisions. Every decision is a judgment, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
And it's discriminatory. Every decision you make, you're discriminating between this or that. How you make that discrimination, how you make that decision, I think there are more appropriate ways than others, but situational awareness I find to be something that is very, very positive, and I think it's much more focused on discernment than judgment. Because this is, I think, where we cross a line where you get below the line behavior versus above the line behavior is judgment, which is why I think every sacred tradition talks about the negative aspects of judging, being judgmental. So can you recall a time when you saw someone beyond their role, beyond their behavior, beyond their history, and actually felt a deep sense of shared humanity with them, in spite of what you were seeing?
Yeah. And it happens occasionally at work. So when at being a pharmacist, you have to learn how to find that shared humanity, because, it can be stressful. It's a stressful environment. It can be busy. There's a lot of people depending on you, needing your help. So you can get frustrated and really easily with patients, or you can get short-tempered or lose your patience. But if you basically back up, and realize that why they're there, that they're there for a reason. They have a story. They're not well. They're sick, whatever it might be, and you find that common ground, and you can basically see the humanity inside them and actually take care of them in that way, instead of judging them for being this way or that way. I've learned to basically find the story behind the person standing in front of me, because everyone has a story. Everyone has a reason why they're there in front of me at that point. It's my job to find that and be able to meet them where they are, to help them.
I've been doing new manager training at work, and this last week we did a session on difficult conversations and conflict that arises in workplace. And I think all of us have people that can trigger us. There's just something about them that can cause you to be turned off. And then there are people, the one thing we were pointing out in that training, though, is that what you usually see from people outside, the outward behaviors you see, are not usually the root issue. There's something deeper.
It's coming from inside.
Mm-hmm. That causes people to behave a certain way or act a certain way or do certain things that may be harmful to them, harmful even to you. And being able to stop and say, wait a minute. This is somebody that they're not aware. They're not aware of who they really are. They're not aware of who they are at their core. They've forgotten. We talked in early sessions about the veil and how we forget. We forget that we are perfect. We were created perfect. We are perfect in our core essence. And they are too. But they've forgotten. And because of that, they do certain things or they say certain things. And it's not only hurtful for other people, but it can be hurtful for them. And this is causing me to stop and say, wait a minute. I feel bad. Now I feel bad for this person. And I have compassion more than anger, I think, toward them for what they do or how they do it. And I know people can do some awful, awful things. But we all have the ability within us in many cases to do awful, awful things, just as much as we have the ability to do really wonderful and great things.
Yeah. That is the hardest thing. I mean, that's why the Jesus story is so powerful, especially when it ends with him basically saying they don't, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, as they're murdering him.
Right.
Right.
And that's a level of compassion that I don't know. Seems just unattainable. But I mean, obviously, it was somebody like himself that was able to do that.
Well, it's funny because I had a conversation this week with someone I love dearly, and we were just talking about the fact that at this point in our life and our relationship, we're taking different paths, and that's okay. But one of the things that kind of causes us to go in a different direction is our understanding about Jesus. Throughout most of my life, I've believed the traditional Christian belief that Jesus was God, equal to part of a Trinity. I don't believe that now. I believe he was God in the sense that, just like we are, that the Christ essence or the essence of God was in him, and he had through multiple experiences allowed that to develop and be what people saw outwardly in his life. But this other, the majority of people, and most people that I know that are professed Christians, they can't accept the fact that Jesus was showing us how we could be, that he is attainable, that his life that he showed and demonstrated is we can obtain that ourselves.
And he said that.
He said, you can do works greater than me.
Right.
Here's the way. Let me show you. I'm showing you
the way,
the truth of who you are and what you can accomplish and what you can do.
And he didn't say, worship me. He said, follow me.
Follow me. I was interested because this morning there was a great article that was talking about there are really only 2 times that a new birth is referred to in Scripture. Almost 100 times Jesus talks about following him.
Mm-hmm.
Yet we find that most people latch on to this because it fits the story that they want to create around Jesus specifically. And at that point, if I can't obtain to his life, I no longer have the responsibility.
Right.
To obtain,
right,
or to grow, or to develop, or try to become, or evolve.
Yeah, he stands in my place.
Right.
Yeah, so I don't have to do that.
I don't have to do that anymore. I always refer to that as a kind of like a get out of jail card free, right?
Yeah.
But it's a get out of hell card free.
Also, yeah.
Right. Where in reality he was being an example. His life is an allegory for what we all go through and can obtain. And the fact that he could see people this way is evidence that I can see people that way. I have to learn and I have to develop that sacred vision in order to do that.
Yeah. I mean, and people who have, strong religious beliefs create, that's a conditioning in a lot of ways. It's part of their upbringing. It's what they're used to. It's what they were taught. They don't question it, but they'll judge you. Even though their scriptures say, not to judge, they're very quick to judge, usually. Christians are usually the worst of that. And I believe, what they do in a lot of ways, but it's, they easily judge people if you don't match what they believe. And that causes a lot of division.
Well, and there's a strong desire in all of us, I think, to think that we're right. It's a matter, again, it gets back to being judgmental. I am right and you are wrong. It's not that we're different,
right? And
or that we may have a different perspective toward the same thing, but it's a judgment now. Right, wrong, good, bad.
Right, and I'm totally guilty of that. Guilty of it all the time.
And all of that is divisive.
Right.
It's divisive.
Well, judgment does divide. Yeah, but that's why I am a big believer in the Ted Lasso phrase of be curious and not judgmental, because it gets rid of that divisiveness. As soon as you allow yourself to open up and see someone else's opinion, you don't have to agree with it, but at least be curious about what made them think that way. Why do they believe that way? As soon as you start being curious and opening yourself up, you can start to say, hey, what do I truly believe? What sits right? But as soon as you lose that curiosity and just become judgmental, or you stay where you're at and don't ask questions and don't open yourself up, you've completely stunted your growth. You've completely divided yourself. Now I'm here and they're there. And it's never a positive thing for either of them.
You and I've talked before about this strong belief that some are in and some are out. I know as I'm around a lot of professed Christians who use the term, well, so-and-so is a believer. So-and-so is not a believer.
It's a club.
We're dividing.
Yeah.
We're dividing.
Mm-hmm.
And
does it make you treat them different? Because it shouldn't.
Well, I was going to say, wouldn't that be...
Wouldn't you want to spend more time with a non-believer if you truly believed what you believed?
Correct.
You'd want to spend time with that person and help them. Right. But they tend to not want to be around the non-believers because they don't believe the same thing. It's completely, it's an oxymoron. It's the opposite of what you should be doing.
I think the thing that doesn't resonate with me is the exclusiveness of it. I believe in unity. That's the whole concept of this season, is unity in every facet and form. And I believe in a God that is a God of unity, not a God of division or exclusiveness.
And I can't even. I mean, we can go way back and we can get into the weeds of the details of things. But in a way, I can't blame Christians for this mentality. We came up in it, but it also stemmed from Judaism. I mean, the whole base and foundation of Christianity is Judaism. And what did the Jews think? They thought they were special. They told everybody that we had the one God. No one else has it. So I mean, it makes sense that it stemmed and became the exact same thing in a different package.
Well, so yeah, I think in fact today many Christians, and they really want to be Jews.
Oh yeah, well I mean they hold on to a lot of things that are That's basically Judaism.
They truly still believe and worship not only the God that Jesus himself said to the Jews, you worship the God of this world. Your father and my father aren't the same. And that's why they hated him.
Sure.
Because he was pointing out that they were following. Now, there's a belief system called Gnosticism, where and the Gnostics believe that there was a lesser God that really is responsible for the creation of the material world, called the demiurge. And the Gnostics would say that was the Yahweh of the Old Testament. The Old Testament God was the demiurge. It was the lesser God. And I know some people would think about that and they go, well, wait a minute. No, there's no way. But Jesus himself said to the Jewish people that he was a part of, you worship your father. The works of your father you do. My father, this isn't my father. I have a different father than that. And you do too, but you don't understand that.
Well, right. And take the time to actually read the Old Testament. I don't like that God.
Well, he is exactly what we're talking about. That's
right.
Why I wanted to bring this up.
Right.
That God was divisive.
Right.
That God was exclusive. That God was jealous. That God judged all people, hated some. That God would tell those people to go and destroy every man, woman, and child.
Right.
Every animal, everything, just destroy it.
Right.
Because he was a jealous God.
Right.
Well,
and I don't like that God.
That God.
Right. That's not
a God of love.
And that's not the God that Jesus loved. That's not the God that he professed.
I think the thing that people closest to me, people close to you, who, again, they know our background. They know we were raised in a Christian faith, that their biggest fear for us is that we're lost, or that we've strayed away from. And the fact is, that's not at all true. If I probably love and I probably value and appreciate Jesus more
100%
today, because he accomplished these things as a person, a human, not as a God.
No, he was.
That he but the same essence that was in Jesus that had been perfected or completed or whole through, again, multiple experiences, Jesus was, then we can do that too. That's the objective, is to become one with the Father, the true Father.
Right.
It just hurts my heart. It hurts my heart. I just hate the division that's created as a result. I love the people. Even because I have to. I was one. I've been there. I've been on that journey. Same place.
Mm-hmm.
And as I look back, I'm like, wow. It helped. I hope it helps me be compassionate and not angry toward people that Or,
Well, it definitely takes the pressure off of you because you're not trying to save their souls.
no.
So, I mean, you're not worried about them like you would be if you held your previous beliefs.
Right. I'm not worried about them because I know that in the end we're all children of God on a journey back to oneness,
right,
and unity. We just may be at different places, and that's okay. I had a conversation with someone else this week and was saying, we're just in a different place. Can we give each other and have dialogue? I'm still learning. I'm going to move from where I am today. I will move further and more.
But you should. Everything moves. Right. Everything changes.
Because the more life throws at you, the more experiences you have, the more you learn and grow, I think. So this is why I'm happy to have conversations with anybody.
Yeah. Be curious.
I love it. I think it's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
So how does the way I see myself influence how I see others?
Well, it starts from there, 100%. Because we've said it before. You've said it many times. That one of the things that Jesus even said was to love your neighbor as you love yourself. Well, I can't love my neighbor if I don't love myself. You got to love yourself first. And there's a lot of people who don't love themselves, and it shows. They struggle to connect with people. They struggle to understand where people are coming from. They become quickly judgmental. Their problems become your problems. And you've got to learn to love yourself. You've got to learn to be able to sit with yourself comfortably, see your thoughts, understand where they're coming from, what they are, what they're not. Discern that in order to not judge somebody else. So it starts within. I mean, everything in this life starts internally, because your outer world is just a reflection of your inner world.
So there's the Hermetic principle,
right,
of correspondence, which we'll touch on a lot as we get further into all the material. But the concept of as above, so below, as within, so without.
Yep.
All of my studies of the law of correspondence talks about projection. We tend to project. And that term, if you think about it, is just like a TV signal or a movie signal that gets onto a screen. That image has to be projected somehow. And we have a tendency, I think, in our behavior to project out onto other people our own internal image and view of ourselves. When we judge someone else, we're actually judging ourselves. There's something in us that is causing us to project that outward, when in, I think, a healthy and appropriate way, we should be turning that inward and dealing with that issue in ourselves. Concept of the shadow, we talked about that, and Jungian psychology and individuation or self-actualization and other elements of psychology. You don't have the right or the authority to judge other people as good, bad, right, wrong. You've got your own internal work to do, so that when you do project, to your point, if you don't love yourself, you can't project love effectively or correctly or authentically outward. Same with compassion, same with kindness. We did my work team, we really kind of a cool team building exercise we're doing right now. We're taking Reiki training, level 1, which is a Japanese healing art.
Energy healing.
And it's wonderful. We had our first session, it was about 4 hours. It's amazing to me that the beginning of that whole training is all about recognizing your true self. And they teach you to heal yourself. They teach you to love yourself, how to because you can't effectively share that until you've done it and applied it and understand it yourself. Basic, same principle.
But that's the exact opposite of what most Western Christian churches are teaching. That's where the disconnect is, and it was for me, because they tell you that basically you're not worthy. You're dirty. You're damaged goods. You need a savior. You need somebody to do it for you. They don't teach you self-love.
And you need us to help you
do that, but they don't actually do it for you. They don't actually help you do that. They don't have you learn how to love yourself. They don't spend time learning how to realize who you are. There is no, the closest thing is prayer, but that's even outward. Everything that I struggled with Christian religion was basically everything was out there. It was always after this life, or it was always other people. And it was never anything to work on yourself. And that's one thing that lacks. And I think that's one thing why there's so much division, because there's so many people who basically are just looking on the outward. They're looking at, I'm me, you're you. We're not the same. Even when we are. Even when we're here together in this room trying to do the same thing, there's still that awkward tension between people.
Wouldn't the world be boring if everybody was the same all the time?
Yeah.
I mean, they see humanity driving toward the fact that we evolve collectively and that we become one. The differences are educational. They're interesting. It's what causes us to learn, is to see and to understand and value and process those differences. This is one of the things we talked about when we talked about conflict and conflict management in work, in a work environment as a manager. It's really conflict. It arises because two people can't accept that they're different. And one has, and they either one or both of them have to be right.
Right.
So you end up in a conflict.
Right.
When in reality, if you would just acknowledge, okay, so-and-so has a different experience. So-and-so has a different perspective. They approach this in a different way. It's different than the way I do it, but is it wrong because it's different?
Don't put a label on it.
Don't put a label on it. And I have to be right. There's a lot of conflict that goes on, and judgment occurs because you're different in my mind, and that's not okay. It's not okay to be different. Think about all the things we hear about in the news. You think about all of the social difficulties, the judgments that are being made, that because you do that, you are wrong. Could be sexual orientation, it could be political view, it could be religious, whatever. It all boils down to the fact that I can't let you be different, and you're wrong if you don't agree with me.
Yeah. And the way I look at it is, that person's life is that way. That's what makes them happy. As long as they're not affecting anyone else, I'm glad they're happy.
Yeah.
What's wrong?
Believe that. It's okay.
Yeah.
I'm okay that you believe what you believe.
Right.
Now, if you ask me, I'm going to tell you what I believe. I'm not going to shy away from doing that, because I think I have every right and every reason to share and explain, what causes me to think and feel the way I do. But I'm okay. It's okay that we're in different places. It doesn't mean I can't love you or that I don't love you.
Right.
So, in fact, I hope that shows I love you, that I give you that freedom or give you that ability to be where you are and be okay with that. So what's it mean to hold compassion for others while still holding and honoring a healthy boundary and discernment?
Boundaries are still important, just because it's your own peace of mind and your own inner being okay, because you can absorb too much and allow negative energies in. So it's a fine balance between compassion and empathy. It's basically understanding where they're coming from. If you're able to put yourself in their shoes and be empathetic, that's good, but don't absorb their energy as much as possible. And that's a tough lesson for me, because I tend to meet them. If I meet them where they are, I tend to meet them at the energy level they are, which is not a good thing for me. It's better if I were to be able to maintain my own energy and understand where they're coming from and help them out, but not, pull myself into the same miserable energy level. So boundaries are huge. And that's just a protective way to keep yourself safe, or keep yourself in good spirits.
This has been probably one of the more fascinating things I'm learning, that everything is energy. Everything is energy. This is why doing the Reiki training is so, because it's really, Reiki is two Japanese words. We learned this, so I'm going to share this learning. So Rei is spirit or spiritual. Ki is energy or life force. Qi in Chinese, it's prana. In Indian Hindu philosophies and Buddhism, you've got life force, that essence of life in us. And because of that, we vibrate at different frequencies. Love is the highest frequency, I believe, we can radiate at. God is love. That is the frequency of God, is to radiate at that frequency. And you can feel that energy, to your point. I can walk in a room and tell if the energy is low, if it's negative or it's bad. I can tell if it's high. And, we have to watch out for what I call energy vampires. Because if you get subjected to that energy for an extended period of time, it can negatively affect your energy. But the opposite of that is also true.
Right.
If you're vibrating at a higher frequency, we can raise the frequency, because people tend to be a lot like tuning forks. There's a great experiment where if you have, say, two guitars tuned the same, when you strum one string on one guitar, the same string on the other guitar will resonate with it.
Yeah, actually, I just saw a Facebook reel with that type of thing. Was tuning forks tuned to two different energy levels. One was I think the one that was sitting still was at 412, and there was a ping pong ball next to it. So basically, on a string. And they had another tuning fork that was at 512, so not their same frequency, and they hit that one, and it didn't do anything to the other tuning fork sitting there with the ping pong ball next to it. But when they hit they had the 412 one, another one that was basically the same frequency, and they hit that tuning fork, it caused the other one to move, and it caused the ping pong ball to start moving back and forth, bouncing, because it was the same energy level in those tuning forks. It was a cool science experiment.
So I think it's the final book in our 9-book series that we're going to be coming out with under the Awakening Heaven on Earth series, goes way in depth on energy. And you've shared books and various things with me along the way too, on energy and on frequency. One of the things I think we have to realize is that we do have to watch. Physically separating from certain people is not a bad thing. You're still connected to them. Don't think that you're not, just because. So, give an example. Let's say I choose to separate myself from a group of people. I'm not doing that because I don't love them. I'm not doing that because I don't care. But I'm vibrating at a different frequency. And I have no problem being around people. But when I start to feel drained, I've got to.
You gotta step away, and
have to be able to re-energize.
And that just shows the humanity of Jesus if you pay attention, because he would go into towns and heal people, spend time with people, help them. But then he needed time to get away. And he constantly was stepping away or going into the woods by himself to re-energize himself, because he was drained. It took so much out of him, and he was vibrating at such a high level and helping people, that he needed time to match that energy again, because he had been pulled down so much being around people who were at lower frequencies.
Well, even his disciples, who were probably vibrating a bit higher in frequency than a lot, he had to get away from them.
Sure.
Too, right? And I'm assuming that Jesus, if he were typed by Carl Jung and the Myers-Briggs type indicator, would probably be an introvert, because he had to energize alone versus being energized by being around people. Introvert and extrovert is how you orient yourself to the world and energy. Extroverts get energized by being around other people and energy, and introverts drain by being around a lot of people when they have to go back off on their own to re-energize, and then they can come back out.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm that way.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times I've had people perceive that when I separate or I isolate myself away from them, they would see that as being rude, or they might see that as being unfriendly, and I've had to learn how to manage that. But don't take the fact that I go off on my own don't take that personal. It's not personal.
Yeah.
It's if I'm in a place where I've got something I'm doing and I need a certain level of energy to do it, and I'm focusing that energy on this work. And if I can't do that work if my energy is depleted by something else, right? So there's this easy judgment that says, hey, where are you? Why aren't you coming around anymore? Or, because right now I'm focused on something and my energy is focused on that. And if I distract myself from that, or if I go and do too much of, you got to learn to manage that. But don't take it personal. Right?
Yeah.
It's not that I don't love you. I'm just really focused right now on something that.
Yeah. To your point of walking into a room and feeling an energy. I mean, that was something that I've always been a big proponent of in pharmacy. So pharmacy, we're working in very tight spaces. You're working with the same people for 8 hours a day in a tight space. So you start to feed off each other. You can feel an energy in that room because we all give off our own energy vibes. And it was always very important to me to try to maintain a high level of energy in a pharmacy and keep it positive as much as possible, because it can drain really quick. All it takes is one angry customer or someone having a bad day to really bring the energy level down, and everybody, will feed off of that and just get worse and worse and worse, spiral. So that was always something I worked on, and it would, try to, make jokes or keep, play music and things like that, just to keep the energy level high so that we were more productive and had a better day. And people could feel that. They could feel the energy shifts between when I was not there, between when I was there. And then also, to your point, people could feel when my energy level was off, when I was having a bad day. And I would, exude that same energy, and it was negative energy at this point, but they were feeling it. Where they usually felt the positive, they felt the negative, so they could tell I was off. But there also were days where I was just being quiet or internal, and in my own thoughts, and they were like, "What's wrong with you? Are you okay?" I'm like, "No, nothing wrong with me at all. I'm processing something. I'm trying to figure it out, so I'm being quiet." Don't take my quiet for meaning that I'm, upset or mad at somebody or not happy. It's not that. It's just I'm trying to process this, and that's how I process things is inside myself. I don't talk it out all the time.
Right. And then, of course, that can cause division between people because they think you should be processing things the way that they process.
Right. And so it's a quick judgment on their part, because usually I'm talkative or social, because, have to be as a pharmacist with staff and also patients. But then when I have a day where I'm very quiet, they're like, he's in a bad mood. No, not necessarily in a bad mood. I'm just processing something. It's got my full attention and it's causing me to be quiet. So it's not necessarily, that's an assumption on their part, which is a judgment. Right, wrong, or indifferent. It's just, that's what we tend to do.
And I don't want to give off the idea that I don't believe in being in community, right? Being in group. I do think that's really important. I think it's very critical.
Yeah.
Because there are people out there that are actually vibrating at a higher frequency than I am, that I can enjoy and gain and learn and grow from. And I think that energy is the source of healing. I do feel we need to share the energy we have to heal people. That That's essential. And to your point, though, give people the freedom and the respect that if they have to go off and re-energize alone, or they have to go focus their energy somewhere else in a different way for a time, don't take that personal. Don't be compassionate toward that. And then I'll be compassionate toward you as well, right? It goes both ways. Compassion has to go both ways.
Mm-hmm.
I find it to be healthy. That's why I like this concept of healthy boundaries. I find it to be healthy to sometimes step away.
Yep.
And then you go back, and you can go back with higher energy and more that you can share and more that you can. Here's something I thought was really interesting. As I've studied energy even before we started this Reiki training. But one of the things I learned in my studies of Reiki practitioners and healers is that many of them are actually more effective when there's distance between them and the person that they're working with. The healing that they can do sometimes is more effective when it's done over distance than it is when they're physically and co-located. And healing doesn't require that you be physically present.
Right.
Again, Jesus is a good example of, there were several times where he healed
someone at a distance.
Someone that was at a distance. How do you do that?
Right.
If you're not connected to them?
Right.
How do you do that? Does distance really divide?
Nope.
No.
Yeah, physics is proving that.
Our eyes say it does, that divides us or separates us. But the fact is that it's not. It's in our head.
Mm-hmm.
It's not in reality. So here's a final question we'll ponder. If I practice seeing others as inherently worthy of dignity and belonging, what might gently change in my conversations and relationships and daily encounters with people?
You'll come from a better place when you talk to them. You'll have more patience, compassion, more understanding, and allow you to maintain your high energy levels as well, without bringing you down. Just finding a common thread of humanity with each other just helps you understand why they are the way they are, or why they think this way, or, like I said, just be curious. Find out, more about whatever the situation is. So, I think it'll improve all relationships, friendships, everything.
Did you ever see the movie The Breakfast Club?
Been a long time, but yeah.
In my training as an organization development consultant, which is all about the application of behavioral science in organization, and there's a technique or a tool we would use or do use called a T group, a training group, where you take people that are in conflict or they're different, and you just put them together in a room, unstructured, and leave them there together.
That's kind of the gist of the movie.
Just that movie, right? You had, I think there were 6 kids that were in detention together. They all came from very different backgrounds, very different experience in life. They were all judgmental of each other because they perceived that person was a hood, or this person is a jock, or this person is a whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But then the whole essence of that movie is that as they talked, as they got to really know each other, they realized, number one, that they really weren't that different.
Yeah, they had a lot in common.
That they actually had a lot in common, and they became understanding of why somebody was the way they were.
Right. From their background, their home life, whatever it might be.
Whatever it is. We refer to that as peeling back the onion. The onion has multiple layers to it. The outer layer of that onion is just one of many. The core of the onion is buried deep. And we as people tend to do this. We veil, right? We talk about the veil. we have multiple layers of veil over us, and we have a tendency to only look at the outer layer. And we judge it based on the outer layer.
Right.
So the other day I'm cooking, being a chef, go figure, and I had an onion, and the onion had a blemish on it on the outside. And I'm like, wonder if this onion is rotten all the way through. Well, it wasn't. It wasn't. The onion still had value. I just had to peel back a few of the outer layers, get that piece, the bad piece out, and the rest of the onion is perfect. It was great. And people are that way. Yet a lot of people would just look at that outwardly and say, oh, that's rotten, and they throw it away. They discard it. How often do we discard people?
All the time. Every day. And that makes me think, speaking of movies, the movie that we just watched this past Christmas, Red One, where basically Dwayne Johnson, the elf person, was having a hard time seeing the good in people anymore because he didn't see their true essence. He just saw all the bad in the world and that things were getting worse and worse and people were just not nice. But then Santa basically said, there's still a child in each of them. We're the ones who can see it. That's our job to help them. So as soon as he was able to see the child within the adult again and peel back the layer of why he had become what he had become, and he saw the child and his belief blossomed again. It was just a kind of a cool way of seeing it.
So we've kind of touched on this from a couple different angles. I want to bring it up and talk about it more, and that is the idea that we actually teach children. We're not helping them.
No,
we're not helping them. What did Jesus mean when he said that you need to be like this little child?
Yeah.
And yet the disciples at one point, when the children were coming to him, said, do you want us to get the children away?
Yeah.
Well, no. In fact, bring them in, because quite honestly, they're more open to what I'm showing and saying and teaching than you are.
Right.
You need to be more like them.
Right.
So what do we do? What would change if we changed our education system?
A lot.
What did Jesus really mean when he said, train up a child in the way that they should go? How should children should be teaching us in some cases?
Yeah. Yep. That makes me think of a Buddhist monk talking about, I forget who it was that said it, but basically if we could teach, all 8-year-olds how to meditate, the world would change in one generation.
So why are we not teaching?
Right.
This, to me, the concept there is that I should be being taught how to meditate, how to connect internally and have that. So many people talk about wanting to have a personal experience with God, and yet they don't think God's near them. God's too far away. Well, God is inside.
God's outside of this life.
He's
not even here. Right.
He's way off somewhere when God is really in you. To me, the greatest experience is when you teach people to go inside themselves and connect, as we talked about in the previous episodes, with the source, God source in them. And we should be teaching our children to do that. And we should be, I guarantee the world will change. The awakening that we keep referring to, that is when it's going to happen, is when I hate to say it because I don't want to be conspiracy theorist, but I can honestly say there is spiritual wickedness in high places. There is a desire to not have the world awaken, because at that point, when people have when they are independent of their need for someone to shepherd them or guide them to be able to connect to God, they can't be controlled.
In those entire, businesses or, religions fall because they're not needed anymore. Government. All
institution, quite honestly, is contingent on people being
reliant on, people relying on them. Mm-hmm. And if people could have become self-reliant or self-realized, they wouldn't need help from outside sources as much.
I do think that there is an entire chapter in one of the books about education and how this can or could change the way we approach education. I agree with you. I think if we were to teach and raise children as family, in fact, as families, I love prayer. Prayer is only a part of the process. Meditation is a listening and a connecting internally. And we need to do that, I believe, collectively, as a family, with others outside of our family. You have to do it individually, do it as families, do it collectively, and the world will change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's what Gandhi said. He said, if you want to change the world, go home and love your family.
Well, if you can't love your family, it's no different. If I can't love my family, how can I love people outside of my family?
Yeah.
If I can't love myself, how can I love my family?
Yeah.
Right? All those complexities, but everything, when you peel the onion back, what's the core? Each individual. World awakening happens through individual awakening.
Correct. Yeah, it's not going to be one amazing change. Everyone believes the same thing. It happens internally. Your world changes internally, it will change externally.
You know, another area I had conversation with this dear friend of mine on this week is about the Christ. You know, there's a perception by many that Christ is a person. One person. My belief now, because I've changed, I used to believe that, is that Christ is not a person. Christ is an awareness, a consciousness. The Christ is the essence of God that exists in all creation, not just people. The Christ is in nature. The Christ is in all creation. So that means if Christ is not a person, when we talk about the second coming, that's not talking about the return of a person.
No.
It's talking about the same thing Jesus spoke to Nicodemus about, the new birth, the raise. The Christ child exists in every heart, in every person.
And the name Christ was a title given to Jesus. It wasn't his name.
No.
No one knew him at that time as Jesus Christ. In fact, he probably wasn't even called that when he was alive. It's something we probably gave to him after the fact. No different than, popes. We make them saints after they die. Things like that. So it wasn't his name. He embodied it perfectly. So,
yeah. But Krishna also means Christ.
Correct.
Right? But because it's of a different culture and a different story and
but it's the same consciousness.
The same consciousness. The Buddha. And I don't even like to isolate it into them. They are just examples of highly evolved humans,
right,
that allowed the Christ that was in them, the same Christ that's in you, to be the primary thing that you would see and experience through them. They're a vessel. They're a vessel, and they allowed the Christ in them to grow and to develop and to be the primary element of their being.
And they most likely came at very specific times to help people when the world was very dark and needed redirecting.
So that second coming is something very different to me than I always have believed.
Yeah.
It's interesting because there's actually Paramahansa Yogananda. We've talked about, you introduced me to Yogananda and his philosophy, his yogic philosophies, wrote an entire two books on
2 volumes on and called it the second coming.
Second coming of God.
Right. And it had nothing to do with the end of the world and things like that, right?
Fascinating. A lot more to come.
Mm-hmm.
I love these discussions, and I hope it's stimulating and anybody who takes the time or the energy to listen. Oh, by the way, we do, this week was a special week. We were able to release our Unity album of wonderful music that really tells the story of the basic message from our book, Unity, A Mystical Journey to Oneness on Earth as It Is in Heaven, which is the book that's unfolding right now in our podcast. We plan to publish the book maybe later this year after the season is over, as we should get ready to go into the next season in the podcast. But all of this works together. All of these pieces that we're creating work together. The books, the podcasts, the music, the art, because there is art also. So if you go to our website, which is awakeningheavenonearth.com, you can access all these pieces out there. And it's exciting. It's exciting because it all works together. You're a music person. I love music, always have. And music is going to resonate with some people more than this podcast will resonate with people, or the art will resonate with some people more than any other. And poetry, there's actually also poetry that we share that shares these basic ideas and concepts. And we're not asking anybody to, this isn't a religion that we're trying to build here. This is just
shared humanity
and truth of who we are. Who are we? And so I'm very excited about that. So it's available now on a number of the different music platforms. It's rolling out slowly. It's interesting. I learned a lot about how all this works. But it's on Spotify. It's on YouTube. It's on Amazon Music. It'll be coming out on all the Apple platforms. It just takes a little bit longer for that to all hit. iHeartRadio. So if you're an iHeartRadio person, you can go out and find, again, the album is Unity, Awakening Heaven on Earth. We're very excited because I think the music is going to be a great joy. So with that, as we bring this conversation to a close, I want to just acknowledge something very, very simple. Seeing others with sacred vision doesn't mean you ignore difference or struggles or boundaries. It just means you remember that the breadth of all of those, that there underneath all that, there's a shared humanity, a shared being, and a shared belonging. Joel, thanks for bringing your honesty again and curiosity into our discussions today. And for those that are listening, I hope this conversation in some fashion or form invited, even if it was just a moment of seeing somebody or yourself with a little bit more compassion, a little bit more understanding, then let's let that be enough. Unity often begins very quietly. Often it begins in how we see. And with that, the space between continues.
Thank you for sharing this sacred space with us. As you return to your day, may you carry whatever resonated, whatever stirred, whatever invited you more deeply into presence. The space between heaven on earth is a companion to awakening heaven on earth, where the teachings are explored through reflection and lived experience. If this conversation spoke to you, I invite you to sit with it, breathe with it, and allow it to unfold in your own way and time. Until we meet again, may you walk gently and remember the unity that already lives within you.